The information found in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hi, and welcome to the Women in Depth podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lourdes Viado. Join me as we explore the inner lives of women, their struggles, fears, hopes, and dreams. We'll go beneath the surface and take a deeper look at what is hidden, unknown, uncertain, and uncomfortable. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, my guest is courage advocate, writer, and joyful experiencer, Debra Oakland. Debra is the founder of Living in Courage Online, a spiritual oasis for overcoming life's biggest challenges, and the author of Change Your Movie, Change Your Life, 7 Real Concepts for Courageous Change. Over a short 4 years, Debra experienced a series of unimaginable losses. Her 21-month-old son, her baby girl in the 8th month of pregnancy, both of her brothers, and her father. Today, Debra is here to share her story of strength, to offer hope and inspiration to those in the depths of suffering, that even in the midst of immense tragedy, there are silver linings and a path to fearlessness. Debra has been featured in major media outlets, including TV, radio, magazines, and best-selling books. She lives in Laguna Beach, California, with her husband and best friend, Cody. Hi, Debra, and welcome.
Hi, Lourdes. Thank you so much for inviting me to your show. What an honor.
Oh, thank you so much for saying yes. Yeah,
My pleasure. Oh, and one thing I just wanted to say was it was my 21-year-old son, not 21 month old. 21. Yeah. I had him longer than 21 months, which is a blessing, having lost our daughter at birth. So that was it's a tough road.
Yeah.
Courage required.
Yeah, it's almost like you're forced to access that courage at a certain point.
Yeah.
You know, these multiple life-altering losses. You know, I think I used the word unimaginable to kind of somewhat get a sense of this experience, but I know that doesn't even come close to grasping the reality of the lived experience of what you went through. Can you share a little bit more? I mean, you began when you began to speak about your 21-year-old son and then your daughter. Could you talk a little bit more about this series of losses?
Yes, I sure can. It started with my brother, Tim, in 1992, and he had AIDS, actually. And he was one of the first people they were testing at UCI Medical Center. And he lasted a very long time, but he passed in 92. And we took care of him. That was quite a shocker. And all that we did to care for him was, as you can imagine, quite devastating, because this was new at the time. Nobody really knew what was happening. And then there was hope on the horizon that this could get better, that maybe they could help these people. But it didn't happen. And so it was quite a roller coaster ride with him. He was a wild, crazy one anyway. So it was quite a roller coaster ride for the entire family and his friends. So after that, in 1993, this was one a year. My husband Cody and I lost our baby girl Ren. She had been stillborn, and I was at work, and I went into labor. And I thought, whoa, I'm a little early. I shouldn't be going into labor right now. And we were going to the underwater birthing center in Upland at the time. And we wanted to do this as natural as possible. And we called our doctor, and he said, well, let me, have you go over to the pharmacy and get these little pills, and they'll just stop the labor from happening. And so I took the pill, and then after I got home, it was funny because I laid on my back, and we would play music to her, and she would dance around, and we put music on, and there was no movement. And I knew something was horribly wrong. So we went in to see the doctor, and she had been stillborn for a week. So I had to go through labor. I had to go through the full labor. And I had her within an hour, and she was fully formed and beautiful, full head of black hair. And she was very tiny, though. It was early, but we lost her. And that was, we'd already lost my brother. Now I'd lost the baby. Then in 94, we lost my brother, Ted. And then in 95, I lost my son, my 21-year-old son, who was up in Vancouver with his girlfriend. They had just moved there. And that story is quite horrific, what happened with the details of it. It was involving a drunk driver. And we lost him, and we got the call that morning at 5 a.m, which is after those 4 losses, just a short time later, my father died of prostate cancer. And it was a long haul. There was a lot of shock involved. I'd never really experienced shock before. And when we got the call in the morning about my son, that really took me down, because I'd never experienced shock in that way. Although I'd lost both my brothers and the baby, we had a little time to wrap our heads around it. When we got the call at 5 a.m. from my son's girlfriend in Canada, I was asleep, and I woke up, and we heard the phone ring, which was very odd at 5 a.m. No one calls at 5 a.m. And my husband got up and went out and answered the phone, and he was gone a long time. And I thought, oh, it's probably his brother, because he's had different issues over the years with trips to the hospital from being diabetic. And so I thought it was probably about that. So I went back to sleep, and my husband comes back and sits on the side of the bed and wakes me up. And I said, what happened? And there was no warning. He didn't say that there's been an accident. He was in so much shock himself. He said, Wade's dead. And, all I thought was, okay, if I go back to sleep, this didn't happen. If he walks back out the door and I go back to sleep, this didn't happen. And I mean, you can't even wrap your head around something like this. And I sat up, and I could barely take it in, and he was in shock, and it was just so heartbreaking. And that morning, we actually had plans to go to an event. And so we got up and started walking around. And when you're in shock, you want to sit down, and you don't want to feel anything or experience anything. You can't move. You just want to sit. But the minute you sit, you can't sit. You need to get up and move around. So it's this very strange feeling I'd never experienced before at that level. So I told my husband, Cody, I said, can you call our friends and tell them we're not going to be attending this event this morning? So he called them, and they came over, and they said, you're going to this event. And you'll understand why in a minute. They said, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do today. What are you going to do? Just sit here. This is a spiritual event that we went to. I was in such shock, I didn't know what to do. I said, okay, we'll go. So we got there early before anyone, and we sat down on the side of the concrete waiting for the door to open. And this woman showed up and unlocked the door, and she looked at me and she said, are you okay? I said, no, I'm not. I just lost my son this morning. And she said, you're as white as a ghost. Come in. And she took me in, And she introduced me to Lee Carroll, who was the speaker, and told him I'd lost my son. And he said how sorry he was for my loss. And we were all seated, and we're in the 5th row. I was directly behind Louise Hay. And he got up on stage and he said, normally when I'm coming to speak, I'm told what I'll be speaking about when I get on stage. And he said, this morning, there was nothing. He said, this doesn't happen. And he said, when I got here, I met a woman who had lost her child her son this morning. And he said, then I knew that today was to talk about the loss of children.
Wow.
It was a full day event with hundreds of people. And he said, there's 4 people in this audience who've lost children recently. And the whole day, I get chills right now thinking about it, was about the loss of children. And it got me through that day in a way nothing else could have.
That's powerful, Debra.
It was amazing.
How synchronistic is that?
It was. And you have to trust the process and these synchronicity occurrences, and trust that you will be led where you need to be at the right time, at the right place, and that you will be taken care of.
Yeah, I love synchronicities because, when I see them and they happen, it reminds me that you're on the right path, because sometimes it's easy to forget or doubt.
It's an open door.
Yeah.
Will you walk through it or won't you? It's a choice.
I know that our focus is also to speak on how these losses are the foundation of your work, your book, and the gifts that have come to you through this. I also want to spend a little more time in the pain of it, because I know that for many people, they want to know how to navigate that, or how to be in it if you're not able to. And I think right now you've begun so beautifully with just following, what is put in front of you, following the synchronicities and trusting in them. But I wanted to ask you beyond this, and also all of the losses in these 4 years, how did you cope?
Well, I started to look back. And when someone passes, I look back and I look for clues. And my son had come out from Canada to visit with his girlfriend. And he spent some time with us. And it was near Christmas time. And he said, he called me near Christmas and he said, Mom, I want to meet you and the whole family together at my mom's house in Colorado. And he said, I want us all to meet there and be together for Christmas. And I said, okay. And he didn't bring his girlfriend. He said, I'm not bringing her, Raya. I'm coming alone, but this is important to me. And that was not like him. And I said, yes, we will. And we all met in Colorado Springs at my mom's and her husband's home. And for 7 days, all he and I did was talk about everything we'd ever wanted to talk about or discover, but mostly about life and death, and what happens to you, and what do you believe in, and what do you think happens when you die, and why did you leave my dad? And I told him everything that he ever I answered every question he ever had a question about. We talked about everything, but mainly spiritual. And on Christmas morning, we got up and we were going to be going into the living room and joining everyone. And my son was in the kitchen with my mother. And he said, I'm so happy you're here. Something to that effect. And he said, Grandma, I'm not supposed to be here. And she said, what do you mean? And he said, I'm not supposed to be here on this earth. And she said, oh, she just kind of passed it off. And she said, oh, come on. We love having you here. Let's go on and enjoy Christmas morning. And she told me this after he passed, which was in January. And he knew something was happening. And I was even told that he would have left sooner, but his soul would have taken him sooner, but that because of all the loss I went through, he knew I couldn't have handled it. He waited. Now, I don't know if this is true, but I do know that he knew there was somewhere else he needed to be. And in my belief system, this is strictly for me, and it gets me through the day. I do not believe that this is it, and that we are the body. I believe that we are so much bigger and so much more. And I know if they were gone, that their soul had somewhere else for them to be. And that really, at the end of the day, isn't any of my business. It's the business of their soul and their journey on this magical adventure of life, wherever it may take us. So that was something that I thought back about these things, and it was almost like he prepared the way. And when I took him my husband and I, we took him to the airport after that Colorado visit, the plane was delayed. So we walked into the airport and we sat on a bench together, and he was to my left and I was in the middle and my husband to my right. And he said, "Do you want a piece of gum?" And I go, "Okay." So I took a piece of gum and we all held hands, and we didn't really talk much. And that's the last time I was with him. And then he walked off to go to the airplane. And I always think about that moment. It was very special. But after that, to get through it all was a very sacred time for my husband and myself, because we needed to do it almost in our grieving, almost in private. We went back to the world we had to live in because we needed to work and whatnot. But we mainly did our grieving in private, because I noticed however you react to people out in the world is how they react. If you fall apart, they fall apart. If you're strong, they're okay. They want to know that you're okay. And we really needed to do our grieving privately. And we did that. And with our family. It was because I've already gone through the loss of both of my brothers and our daughter Ren. We had gained some foothold in dealing with grief, and I had actually gained some courage muscles by then. Thank goodness, because it helped a great deal with the accumulating losses and what we went through. And I think each person experiences loss in a different way, and they have to go through the stages of it in their own way. You can't set a pattern for anyone and say, this is exactly what's going to happen for you. Some people are over it very quickly. Some people take a month, some people take years, and some people never get over it. So I think for each person, it's quite a process to go through. And there is no formula that fits each person. And you have to know that it's okay and that you need to grieve.
Yeah, it's powerful, Debra, what you've shared about this experience from the time you had with your son in this last Christmas, the moments and conversations that happened between the two of you, and then what between him and his grandmother at the airport. You can see the perfection in the previous losses, kind of like you said, helping you to strengthen those muscles for this. And I was so moved when you were sharing that. I just want you to know, like, I kind of got goosebumps and my eyes watered. And I love how your spirituality, your belief system, your way of making sense of this is really what supported you through all of this.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
I write about courage and my definition of courage, which came to me after all of this loss. And then shortly after my father, I mean, I lost my best friend. My husband and I lost our best friend to a brain aneurysm, and her story's amazing. And what she set up, it's almost like she prepaved everything, not consciously, but unconsciously. And that's a remarkable story in itself as well. But through all of this, I came to a definition of courage for me. And And I see courage as the will to act from the strength and power within the heart. I always go back to the heart. Courage is a quality you gain through overcoming life's biggest challenges and something you become through experience. And living a courageous life happens when we allow the true essence of who we are to rise up and shine for all the world to see, regardless of other people's opinions. And courageous individuals who are true to themselves feel a powerful resolve that is unshakable, a true conviction of purpose, a willingness to carry on in the face of any challenge. And I feel like standing in the power of purpose is a pure point of courage available to everyone who cares to utilize it. And then this brings forward the power alive within ourselves. And if this power has been greatly diminished, it can be reawakened and can shatter the fear of moving forward towards an intention or goal.
So it's really that the challenges, the adversities, the pain, the struggle are there to give you opportunities to step into your courage and to experience the strength and power and almost like a catalytic process that propels you forward with that.
We don't grow without pain.
Right.
We
Absolutely.
cannot. There's something that I read that just touched me so deeply. And it says the purpose of this incarnation is not to have glossed over the table of contents, but to have explored in depth some of the most poignant and excruciating passages. Your darkest hour was in actuality your shining moment.
Oh, it's beautiful, Debra.
And I believe that if I had not gone through all of this, I would not have become a writer because I was too afraid to step forward and become a writer. And I have nothing to fear after all of this. I'd been through the worst. So I was fearless. I began writing and I quit worrying about whether anyone would want to read it or hear what I had to say. I needed to voice my words to myself. And if anyone else was interested, so be it. But I was fearless then. And I would never have written a book that became a bestseller in happiness and personal transformation here and in Canada without these experiences. So there are silver linings.
Yeah, this reminds me, of a quote by Rumi. I'm sure you're familiar with it, that the wound is the place where light enters you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love Rumi.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit now, Debra, to talk more about, your current work and the foundations that these struggles have helped you to really, I guess, really live out and share with the world. When I was reading through your book, and let me go backwards. I'm too excited. Okay. First of all, I love that you use the metaphor of a movie set. And so I wanted you to speak to that a little bit because I feel that oftentimes we get things more viscerally because of metaphor. And I love that you use that. So could you talk about that?
Yes, I can. See, the interesting thing is when I wrote this book, it morphed itself 3 times. And I thought, oh my gosh, my book's done. I'm so happy. It's just beautiful. It's done. It's easy. And then I thought, wow, it's really dry, but it's done. And then I'm in meditation. Nope, your book's not done. You have a friend who writes about Mother Nature beautifully, and he's going to come over from the UK, and he's going to take on these 7 concepts and how a Mother Nature would respond to these concepts and how she would support them. I'm like, you're kidding me. Nope. He comes over, spends a couple of months with us, does his bit, goes back to England, and I'm all happy. Okay, the book's ready. And then I'm in meditation, and I said, the name of the book is Change Your Movie, Change Your Life. And I'm like, what? This book's not about the movies. It is now. Yep. So
Wow.
this book took on a whole new feeling and a whole new direction because we as the writer, the director, the lead star of our movie, the editor, I mean, we are we are in charge of our movie, of our life. And so I took the book and wrapped it around us being the conscious writer, director, producer of our own movie. And I just was thrilled about this. It really opened up a new way to present the book and wrap it around this concept of movies and make it much more readable and enjoyable for people to really understand what I'm trying to say.
You know, one of the things I love about this too, Debra, is that it captures that this is your life and you're in it, but you're also observing it. You know, like a lot of times we forget that part and we're not able to step out of the scene. And then we also don't realize that you can change, you can rewrite things, you can change the scene, the backdrop, the characters, you know, and I love that it really encapsulates all these aspects of living that perhaps get missed as we just go day to day.
And the ultimate goal is to become the conscious director of our personal life movie rather than the reluctant supporting character.
Right.
You know, I mean, we can fire our supporting characters, you know, we can. And I also talk about this in my book when the part for someone is over, when their part in your movie is over, let them go.
Wow,
They
I love
may
that.
need to go and try out for a new movie in someone else, you know, in a new part in someone else's movie. And it's not that you don't love them or care about them, but let them go. Because we all function at different energetic frequencies. And when you're not on the same frequency anymore, let's just say it like that, like tuning in and out of a radio, they're not meant to be there any longer. And it's okay. New players are going to come in. New people are going to audition for the parts in your movie. And that's how you're going to learn and grow and expand. It's phenomenal.
So, Debra, I love the 7 tenets that are the pillars of your book. And I would love for you to share just a little bit about each one. And I have to say that, I mean, I know they're all amazing and important, but I really love number 1 because, you know, conscious choice. I mean, it really does begin there. And so I just wanted to say how much I loved that was what you opened with. So yeah, I'll just let you go ahead and speak.
The interesting thing, it wasn't conscious choice in the beginning. I think it was decision. It was decision. And a very, very wise friend of mine came to me and he said, decision and conscious choice are different. And you need to change this. And I said, oh, no, you don't know what I've been through with this movie. You can't do this to me. He said, you have to investigate this. It's different than decision. And so the whole book was done. But he was right. So again, I had to go back and re-edit everything. And he was so dead on. And I write about conscious choice constantly in my newsletters. We decide if the movie of our life is going to be, if it's going to be a finely crafted masterpiece or a low budget zombie flick. So the movie of our life is composed of countless scenes or short films strung together to eventually form the panoramic saga in which we presently reside. And we are the results of these scenes. So it's important for us to see how the process begins. And it all begins with conscious choice.
Once someone has made the conscious choice, the next aspect here is wisdom.
Yes.
Why is that? You know, I know you did this in a certain order, you know.
Well,
why wisdom afterwards?
Well, because I think it's important that we make a conscious choice about our life, before we move on, I mean, wisdom is something we gain throughout our entire life. And wisdom comes from the choices that we've made in our life. And I talk about, wisdom being a deep understanding gained by experience of people, things, events, situations that result in the ability to choose or act to consistently produce optimum results with a minimum of time and energy. It's the ability to effectively and efficiently apply perceptions and knowledge, producing the desired results. And wisdom is also the comprehension of what is true or right for us, of course, coupled with optimum judgment as to appropriate action.
So really, there's this process of discerning that comes with that.
Yes. And this definition of wisdom makes me think about what it takes to write, edit, direct, and produce a film.
Right. Yeah. What do you keep? What do you put in? What do you expand?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in the collective movie we call Life on Earth, people are seeking wisdom through like abstract perceptions and theories to gain illumination, enlightenment, and knowledge. And the majority of people want confirmation of their own ideas, beliefs, and values. But true wisdom is gained by an open mind through experience, and it can be challenging and forcing us to push through resistance, keep an open mind, and to constantly we realize life is constant change. And so what happens when a new idea challenges one of your beliefs that's presented to you? Do you want to feel right, or are you because you're afraid? Or, does your mind slam shut because your peace is being disturbed in your core ideas? Are you open to expanding your mind and to opening to new wisdom that could really make a big difference in your life?
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yes.
So true about wisdom. It's so easy to get stuck in how things have always been done or what we were taught, or it's just comfortable and easy. And again, I think this is where, going back to what you said earlier about it's the pain and the struggle that forces you to grow. And I think that where that wisdom comes in, if you choose to open yourself to the knowledge that's available to you because of that experience.
Yes. You can actually be a director of wisdom. As a writer, director, producer, star, and editor of your movie, you don't have to deal with negative people who invite families of fear and its cohorts to make them comfortable on your movie set.
So, Debra, I'm looking at our time, and I want to be respectful of your time.
Okay.
And I know that I won't be able to get to all of these, but I do want to touch on love and then
Yes.
concentrated illumination and then rhythm. And the reason I wanted to touch on love is because I think often in our modern society, I think the meaning and the way that love can be experienced gets pretty limited. And so I wanted to hear you speak about love and its role in this process of growth.
Okay. And there's so many different meanings that people give to love.
Right? Yeah.
I think of divine love is the ultimate, the unconditional love, the beautiful divine love that we come from. We become all these other aspects of love by what we're taught and what we're groomed to or programmed to believe love is. And to me, love, the word love, carries the highest of vibrations. And I write about this in my book. It's a concentrated, positive, magnetic quality in every human heart. And it generates the largest electromagnetic field produced in the body. And as we shift our emotions, we're shifting the information encoded into the magnetic fields radiated by the heart. And think about the movies that touch our hearts so deeply.
Yeah.
Contain a variety of themes involving love, and our heart responds to these. So love has the capacity to heal, removing deeply embedded wounds from our life. And it's what I used in my process, going through the grief and letting go of that amount of grief. And I carry the ones in my heart that I lost as a precious gift. but I'm happy for them wherever they are. They always will live in my heart, and I honor them as a precious gift within me.
So, what about concentrated illumination?
Oh,
I
I
love again.
love this one.
This one sounds so tantalizing.
I know. And also, real quickly, a concentrated illumination. It's one of my favorites, actually. Imagine yourself as a light being inhabiting a vehicle that stores your collective awareness. It's this beautiful light within us that allows us to live, move, and experience our beingness out in the world, in the physical world, in the third dimension, reality. And a lot of people, they love this concentrated illumination in their life. It's just it requires the smallest activity. It's required from the smallest activity to the greatest achievements in life. And without focused concentration, it's difficult to get anything done. And so it's one of those things that I just think of as concentrated light. It's focused energy infused with inspired light. It's combining thought, feeling, and action in a conscious, deliberate way, putting us in the director's chair with authority. Because energy is active, and if you can direct its activity, and you can in any way you choose, you change your life. And this is concentrated illumination.
Last but not least, and I know, Debra, we could just talk so much more in depth about these. So I apologize that I skipped over some of these chapters,
That doesn't matter.
But our readers can definitely, our listeners can definitely get them in your book. Can you speak a little bit about rhythm?
Yeah, rhythm's amazing. And what I use rhythm for in this book is to pull the other 6 concepts together rhythmically. And rhythm is one of the most incredible things in our lives, because you think about rhythm, oh my gosh, everything in our life is rhythm. The cycles of our lives, the patterns, the different stages of development, our heartbeat, our breathing, everything in rhythm in life has a rhythm, establishing cycles, patterns, and different stages of development. I'm repeating a little bit of this because it's important. Our heartbeat and breathing are perfect examples. And Mother Nature flows in rhythmic relationships season to season. And there's great cosmic rhythms throughout the universe, and it binds everything together through these beautiful waves, creating matter. And so for me, it was important to pull these 6 concepts together rhythmically in a way that people could fill out what I had written, fill out the areas that they've written, and for themselves, they can go in and make sense of everything rhythmically through the book.
I think of like divine timing. And, there's what's that quote again? To everything that there's a season. I feel like oftentimes, when we're pushing, trying to move forward in some way, and we have a lot of obstacles or things happening, or we feel stuck, that the rhythm of that time is to not push forward. It's to be. And then there's a time when things flow and it seems effortless to gain progress, like there's momentum behind you. And I think sometimes we don't pay attention to these to the indicators in our life of what the rhythm is, and so we're out of rhythm and trying to move in a certain way that's not supported by the energies of that time, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And I also feel like this helps us to better cope, better come to terms with endings and beginnings, people leaving, because again, that's part of this, nature's cycle.
It is. And, and letting go is so important, and letting go of fear-based programming.
Yeah.
And reaching for our dreams and desires in a conscious way returns us to our authentic roots, to the true nature of who and what we are, to the rhythms of nature. And when we make concentrated effort to connect to our hearts and trust that we know what's right for us, as we did as children,
right,
then we're on the right path, and we're able to accept our gifts and have a new outlook on this beautiful life that we've been gifted.
Debra, if there's someone who is listening who is going through very, very difficult times, a lot of suffering, sadness, what would be some words of wisdom that you could offer?
I would say keep your hope alive. Hope carries a vibration of expectation and change, and it's carried in the heart. There's no borders where love and compassion support us in the heart. And it carries us to new places and heights of awareness and peace that maybe other things can't take us to. And I think keeping hope alive is important to our soul being able to express through us this healing that we so need when we go through the grieving process. You're stronger than you know. You really are. And you have to go in when you're going through the grieving process. I've found it's most important to go inwards, not outwards. The outer world is it's another beast.
That's another few podcast episodes.
Let's like a million of them. Right. The inner world, which is what I always write about, is where you will find your solace, your solitude, your sanctuary. You will find everything you need inside of you. It was put there for a reason, and it's waiting there for you. Whether you can feel it or not, you have to trust that process. And it is there for you always. And if you can tune into that in whatever way you do it, for some it's meditation, for some it's swimming in the ocean, for some it's hiking, for some it's walking on the beach or listening to music. Doesn't matter what it is. There's no judgment. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. Do what works for you, but find a way to tap in, whether it's from writing or just being still, whatever it is, hugging your puppy or thinking about something that makes you happy. Then trust the process and trust what comes through, and it will help you. I guarantee that.
Debra, thank you so much. I mean, I am so inspired and moved, and I feel amazing after our conversation.
Oh, thank you. You're so sweet.
Much. And I want to share with our listeners that you have very generously offered a free gift to support them on their path of courageous living. And this is your monthly Living in Courage newsletter, a free ebook of Living in Courage, and the Inner Hero's Journey MP3. That can all be found on your website at www.debraoakland.com.
Yes, Debra.
Yes, and we will be sure to include links to your website along with other places online that listeners can get in touch with you, follow you, learn more about your work.
Thank you so much. This was such, like I said before, it's an honor. And I just enjoyed our conversation. And I hope if anyone can gain anything from our words, that it helps them in some way or encourages them.
Absolutely. And I know that this episode is going to resonate with many of our listeners. So thank you so much again, Debra.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.
Thanks so much for listening to the Women in Depth podcast. I hope it brings you a deeper understanding of yourself and others, and that you found some insights that illuminated and inspired. You can follow Women in Depth on Facebook and YouTube, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe on iTunes and leave a review. And finally, if you enjoy Women in Depth, please share with a friend. Again, thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.